Hi, Ailey. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I am excited to dive into this. I know you have a new book out that we were discussing before we jumped on here, Detoxify, and I'm excited to get into some of these topics because it's so important for our listeners. I mean, I know it's you were going to talk about some of this, but all the chemical exposure out there and really what
Mhm.
to do about it. So, we all hear the word toxins. We all hear about toxins. So let's just talk about like when, in your opinion, what do you consider toxic chemicals and why are they harmful? Just to kind of give our listeners, I mean, they're very well educated, but some background of,
Yeah.
why we should even care about this.
Yeah, so this is something that's interesting because it's a very big topic. It's a little intimidating. And so when I step into this, I just want to make it very simple, but maybe too simplistic. But essentially, human beings have never needed chemicals and never really made a lot of them until the 1940s and 50s, right? We made plastics to save on, stainless steel or glass. We were using a lot of chemicals to sort of make our lives convenient, to create pesticides, to better manage our farming. We needed, different materials in the industry. Then we started having products and products and products. So these chemicals, which we now estimate around 95,000 is sort of a going number of chemicals that are now in all of the products that we use, they actually have never been in the human existence until about 75 years ago, right? Since about post World War II. And what's so interesting is that no one's really bothered to think about it in the sense that it doesn't, these chemicals don't always smack you in the face. They don't always give you a rash. They're very indolent, they're very subtle, they kind of, are stealth. But what we do know is that in the United States, for instance, the vast majority of these 95,000 chemicals, when they were created, were never required to be tested for safety or toxicity, especially in vulnerable populations like pregnant women or children or immune compromised people, elderly. And what it's done is that we allow these chemicals into all our products and we assume they're safe, or we assume someone has vetted them. When in fact, now we know, after much research, after sort of chasing after these chemicals and seeing that they can do something in animals, we now know that they can do some problems and some harm to humans. And so the big topic is, why should we care? Well, because we're getting sicker. A lot of human beings are getting sicker with both acute issues like dermatitis and psoriasis and food allergies and things that kind of come on quickly, kind of show themselves quickly. And then we have a lot of chronic illness that goes to the immune system, which I like to talk about as a rheumatologist, but also metabolic issues like weight gain or obesity. Diabetes is related to a lot of these chemicals, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, certainly neurodegenerative and Alzheimer's, those type of things. So we have, this sort of short-term problem of exposure, long-term problem, and we're starting to pay attention because so many people are really suffering with a lot of health issues, especially at younger ages, and especially in people who have never had these, history of these illnesses in their families, which shows you environment plays a key role.
Hmm. I think it's very interesting how you brought up that these chemicals haven't been tested. And I
Yeah.
think that's really something, that I have found amazing. Or I don't, amazing is probably not the right word, scary,
Shocking,
over
shocking,
shocking
right? Yeah,
is
yeah, of
over
course.
time that we're
Yeah.
not, that we're just all okay using things that haven't been tested because we feel like it should be safe. Like,
Right.
okay, we have an FDA, we have things in place that should make things safe. So, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have created the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in 1938, but it covered nothing. And it came out of someone who had an exposure to mascara when it was first developed, and a couple women went blind. And so there was this kind of interesting history about how the president was written to by one of the children of the women who died from this lash lure component, and they started to move the needle on, hey, maybe we should test some of these chemicals that are going into cosmetics, not necessarily food at the time. Nothing really came of it. Fast forward 1950s, 1958, a lot of these chemicals are coming out with gusto. We got pesticides, we got rayon, naugahyde, vinyl, polyvinyl chloride. We've got a variety of food chemicals being thrown in. We have, textile, stain guard, non-stick chemicals, solvents, paints, that kind of thing. And still, they're coming out faster than anyone saying, hey, let's hold on here. Why don't we test these before they go? Because no one could predict that they would cause harm.
Mhm.
So there was never anything put into place to really require those tests. And now you see decades later when people are looking retrospectively, and then we're talking about academic centers because the government doesn't require it and manufacturers won't do it. Then you're talking about third party areas where, where they get funding and, have to, kind of squirrel up their own money. But the studies that show many of these chemicals that cause harm are really done as a third party situation and then really brought into the mainstream. So, the idea is that it's kind of after the horse has left the stable.
Mhm.
And because of this, and now that we have so many chemicals, trying to get the genie back in the bottle is pretty impossible to go through 95,000 and test them the way they should properly be tested in humans or animals or both. And so, really, the point of what I do is say, listen, we could wait to let red dye number 3 be taken off the market, which is great. But we also have red dye number 40 and yellow number 6, and we have a million other chemicals that we know are not so great. Why are we waiting when our health is really making a turn actually in terms of what we're seeing epidemiologically? What I see in practice is that people are just getting sicker with a lot more stuff than we ever used to see.
Mhm. And I have heard you say that you have the 4 A's of environmental health management that you've created. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I wanted to simplify this topic. And I've been in this business for about 15 years and I've talked to many different demographics. And what's so interesting is that talking to physicians and training physicians with this topic is no different than talking to seventh and eighth graders or high school students because there's such a limitation on what we know, just like when I was starting to learn this and didn't know why it wasn't taught to me in med school. And the fact is that I had to come up with some paradigm, some way of making it simple. And so I came up with the 4 A's, which is nothing crazy, but it really describes how to go about it. So the first A is assess. And you kind of have to know, given some very basic information, how to assess for chemicals in what you eat, what you drink, and learning just very basic things like bisphenol A and BPA are chemicals that line the inside of cans that are plastics, plasticizing chemicals. And that happens to be harmful to your body because it can affect the hormones of your body, endocrine disruption, and it can also affect the immune system. So now you know, and you're assessing, what do I eat? What do I drink? What kind of air quality do I have? Do I have a lot of candles and air fresheners that are synthetic? Am I eating a lot of processed or ultra processed foods? Am I filtering my water and some of the contaminants that come a lot of contaminants coming through water? That's assess. The second A is avoid or swap. So avoiding is great because why do we need 20 different cleaners for our kitchen? Do we need an oven cleaner, a sink cleaner, a surface cleaner, a window cleaner, a drain cleaner? It's like a million cleaners because we were told we needed those things. We don't. And so avoiding is just saying, okay, let me narrow it down to just some very basic cleaning products or vet them or just use vinegar and that kind of thing. Or swap, because guess what? I'm going to use something different, a product that I vetted on a good website that I share. And, I don't have to make it, but I'll buy it and it's safer. So there's a lot of either assess or avoid and swap. That's the beginning. The third A is add. What do we add to the human body that helps it perform better at detoxifying? The human body is remarkable. We've had our body and our ability to sweat and sleep and chew up, food and get nutrition. We have such amazing ability to function, but we need to add in some of the things we're missing, which is nutrition, because we have studies, and I show them in the book, that when you have certain things like B vitamins, B9, folic acid, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin C, we replenish iron. Certain things actually make the body detoxify better. Cruciferous vegetables as a class are incredibly helpful at churning up the liver in terms of detox. Drinking clean filtered water. So adding in exercise, adding in nutrition, adding in proper sleep and why that matters, not just to feel rested, but to clear chemicals. That's the add. So you take away the bad, you add the good, and then the A that's number 4, which I particularly like because I still color my hair, is allow. And that's the allow of life, right? It's travel. It's my kids on the lacrosse field playing on terribly toxic turf that I post a lot about on the Smart Human feed of my social media. And it's really the part that says, listen, life is life. It's not about perfection. It's about progress, and that you tap into this information and make changes as seem appropriate to you. And that to me is the allow.
And that's an important part because I think one of the things when you start to open the door to chemicals and toxins is that feeling of, oh no, like it can feel so overwhelming, like it's too much. And then sometimes you can just say, okay, I'm not even going to deal with it because I can't give up everything. And so it is
Right.
just saying, okay, there are things, yes, allowing, but
Yeah.
while being smart about it. The other thing within this is when you're talking about the swaps, one of the things that I find difficult that for people is that their labeling is tricky. And
Mm.
so even when you think, there's so many people that have come to me with different products and like, oh, I bought this, and then I dig into it with them, and it's like actually it's not good for this, and this reason, but the label looks really good, all
Yeah,
natural. I'll
marketing
say
is really
like very
slick.
good. And so do you have any
Yeah.
recommendations when people are looking for swaps, like trusted
Yeah.
sources where they can go? I know a lot of people refer to EWG, but some other things
Yeah.
that kind of to
Yeah,
keep
I
in
mean,
mind.
so even for furnishings, I mean, I have a whole set of resources in the back of the book. So,
Okay.
when you want to learn about radiation and, EMF and how to handle cell phones, when you want to learn, there's a great couple of fabulous websites. When you want to learn about buying a new couch, there's ways to learn that. And I have a lot of that laid out. When you want to find out which products don't have waterproofing chemicals or stain guard chemicals, there's a huge organization that handles that as well. So greensciencepolicy.org. So I wanted to make sure that, instead of just telling people brands or categories, that you
Mhm.
could really look individually within a brand, by the people who do this or do it for that particular set of chemicals or products. And, I think that's important. I think to know what you don't know is key. And when I was trying to figure out this book and how to present it, I wanted to give the best information and the best recommendations, but I also wanted to have resources for people to dig deeper into product choice that
Mhm.
I'm not comfortable with, so that I didn't sell any brands, so that the material was really unbiased. And I think that's really helpful. Now, I do teach about how to read a label on personal care products. I
Mhm.
teach about looking for, things without the word fragrance or perfume, for example,
Yes.
because those two words tend to be proprietary by manufacturer and will have up to 300 or 400 chemicals, we never know, of chemicals that are used to make just that word fragrance or perfume on a product, whether it's laundry detergent or cosmetics. So it's just one of those things where I want people to understand how to read a label, but also have the backup of people who do this work well in terms of sussing out safety.
hmm this is just a little side story, but my husband was buying garbage bags, and the
Mhm.
garbage bags come with fragrance,
Yeah,
so I said I don't want any more garbage bags that have fragrance. Like,
correct.
we're not going to use these. Can you get? So he comes out when he buys another box with fragrance, and he's like, I looked at it, Meg, and it didn't have it,
Yeah,
and it was and I'm like, no, it does, but they make it even tricky. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
It's a
interesting how the
challenge.
label. So we had to actually like go through all of the garbage bags to search for like the little words that are like fragrance free garbage bags. And it's like, why
Yeah.
do you need it's garbage? Like, why do you need that fragrance in your
It's
garbage
the
bag anyway?
same reason air fresheners are popular. I mean, people would rather cover dirt than clean it,
Yes.
right? The
Hmm.
commercials with a sink full of fish heads and plates and dirty dishes, and then they're like wafting and dancing around because they have this air freshener, makes no sense to me,
Mm-mm.
right? We should
Yes.
be urging people to kind of just keep up with your mess, right? At least that's what I tell my teenagers and my husband. But the idea is that we're making it okay to cover stuff up. I
Hmm.
mean, right? Isn't that what it is? And so the covering of stuff up is really using phthalates, which are chemicals that they're literally probably hundreds, if not thousands, but I would say hundreds, and they're very well tested for what they do to the human body. We know this for decades. Great research on this showing that they have the effects of manipulating hormones, which is why they're called endocrine disrupting chemicals as a class, but they're also capable of immune changes, immune system changes, which I have coined IDCs, immune disrupting chemicals, not just endocrine disrupting. And it's not to say endocrine system and immune system don't communicate. Of course, our bodies communicate through all its systems, but it's also reframing why we're having such an epidemic of immune disorders that I manage as a rheumatologist. And so I wanted people to understand from that angle how best to take these chemicals away from our body to reduce disease and also manage disease activity.
Yeah. And could we get into a little bit of that? Because I know as your background as a rheumatologist, talking a little bit about chemicals and the immune
Mhm.
system and kind of what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, so, essentially, I've been a rheumatologist and still am for 22 years. I've watched, as sort of, the world of rheumatology opens up, you see many more cases, obviously, of immune disorders because they come to me, but I'm seeing people coming at younger ages. I'm seeing them having autoimmune issues like Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis at younger ages than what I would mostly expect. But when you do the research, I have a small practice, but when you do the research worldwide, we know that even now it's predicted 4 to 7% of the of the US population, sorry, have some type of autoimmune disease, which is higher than it's ever been, and it's continuing to grow. And in my case, and what I'm seeing in the literature is that most cases are de novo new cases with no family history, which really shows that we have this environmental component. Even if you have a genetic underlying predisposition, we do have an environmental component that may be accelerating the presence of this disease kind of, coming to life and sort of showing itself clinically. So, the argument in my world is A, I don't want people sick, and B, I don't want people's diseases that they already have to be worse because of the chemicals that are able to instigate more of an inflammatory response. And so, for all of that, I want people to get rid of the junk that kind of irritates the immune system, which is doing its job. It just doesn't like all these chemicals. And then to add in the nutrition, what I call the human fertilizer, add in nutrition through food, clean water, add in sweating, adding proper sleep to help clear these chemicals, add in certain supplements that I talk about that have to be really high quality, but the right amount and just very limited, but what makes humans thrive and has made humans thrive for years, but we just don't get any of it anymore. So it's very I want to say it's simplistic the way I'm saying it now, but it really makes a lot of sense when you think of evolution and anthropology.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about some of those diet and supplement things that you say, okay,
Yeah.
we should add?
Yeah. Yeah. So I always say I never say supplements in place of a healthy diet, but when I talk about a healthy diet, we all think, "Oh, fruits and vegetables, low, not as much red meat, maybe limited dairy." What I say is I don't want to say I don't care about which of those macros you're focusing on because we know plants do a great job. That's primarily, and Mediterranean diet is excellent. But what I like to say is that if it's the quality of what we eat that matters too. And so I really push for USDA organic food, because I know that it's not costly to the point where we don't have access to it. When you get frozen USDA organic foods, for instance, people are like, frozen, what? Frozen foods that are USDA organic. So USDA organic is one of the only regulations we have in the whole chemical system of our country. It is remarkably important for human health because of the pesticide loads that are not allowed in USDA organic foods. No genetically modified ingredients, no synthetic, preservatives, colors, additives. And so that really keeps the quality to a really good level, very low exposure. But then you have frozen foods that are picked when they're picked, they're flash frozen, so they maintain all their nutritional value. And so you have this beautiful combination of clean food that also is highly nutritious that helps offset some of even the epigenetics, some of the gene changes that go on, with exposure to these chemicals. So it's a win-win to me, at least, and accessible because every big box store in the country generally has their own line because they know how lucrative it is of organic frozen foods like produce, fruits and vegetables. And then you can kind of think more also about, cleaner meats, vegetables, oils, those kind of things. But fruits and vegetables to me, that it democratizes the food system to be healthier when you have frozen, inexpensive frozen organic foods accessible if you can find them. And farmers markets and those kind of things are better, but food travels that's fresh, so to speak, travels a long distance in our food system. Very unpredictable, very variable in its nutritional levels.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think people, when you're saying that, it also frozen organic food is not quite as expensive as fresh organic food,
Yeah, in our
fruit and
food system,
vegetables.
but it turns
Hmm.
out it's actually more
Yeah.
valuable from a
Hmm.
nutritional level and a
So,
cleanliness level.
yeah, that's something everyone can do. Try to go, choose
Yeah,
some
just play
frozen or,
around in a
yeah,
supermarket,
organic.
try
Hmm.
it out. If you spend some time and actually look at price points, I think people will be very surprised by that.
Hmm. And you had mentioned supplements too. So are there any
Yeah.
cornerstone supplements you like to
Yeah,
recommend?
I talk about the supplements that I recommend, and there are four of them for every human being. And I trained in medical anthropology in college, and it's just one of the things that's informed everything I recommend because I look at humans as, just people who have been here millions of years and that we're not getting what we need. And so the four supplements, in addition to clean diet and clean water, and as much as you can do from a food as medicine perspective, is a clean, fabulous multivitamin, not junk.
Mhm.
Junk meaning no colors, preservatives, additives, really well vetted, good brand. I don't share brands, but there's very few that I actually really recommend, but I teach people how to look for them. The second one is vitamin D. You want to have enough vitamin D3 in your diet or in as a supplement to reach a blood level that's in the high normal range from any lab in the country. Usually it's the 60 to 90 range because normal is 30 to 100. So it's more robust at the higher end, and that's where I want people to aim for, unless they have any medical contraindication to that. And then I want people to harness all the good things for their gut microbiome, which is the largest immune system organ in the body. It's 26 feet of bowel. It has tons of great microbes if you feed it well, and avoid pesticides whenever you can. And eat lots of fiber and green, healthy, fruits and vegetables, different colors. So the probiotic is really if you're not getting enough of those foods or microbes in various foods, but then it also helps to support what you lose every day despite all your best efforts. And then I really talk a lot about omega-3 fish oils as well, because we were, eating these kind of fatty acids for millions of years, and now that they're getting watered down, they're junk. They're not your sort of local corner, pharmacy type of brands. You really have to just look a little deeper, and I show people how to do that. So those four things tend to be the supplements that I support as long as doctors, you don't have indication not to do that. And also you can find quality brands or else it's just not worth it.
Yeah, those are great tips. And another thing you talked about that we haven't really touched on yet is EMFs.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
what that's
EMS.
tricky.
Yeah, EMS are
Everyone.
tricky. I actually have a whole chapter in a different book that I wrote. But I do mention it in this book, and I do post a lot of this on my social media feeds for The Smart Human. But basically, radiation is something it's not going away. We love our
Mhm.
cell phones, we love our computers, we're all in this together. We like our Wi-Fi. It is what it is. It's going into 5G more. It used to be fourth generation, now it's fifth generation, which means a little more radiation because actually it travels shorter distances, these magnetic waves, and it actually goes through more buildings and into through walls. So we are going to be exposed to more radiation on a regular basis unless you turn off your server at night, whether you turn off your phone, keep it away from your body. Distance is your friend when it comes to any kind of radiation toy or product, because it's exponentially reducing the amount of EMF waves that your body receives as you move away from your body. So when I go to visit my kids at school and I see all these kids with their laptop right on their groin, I have to say, you guys, it's not meant to be on your body parts. You're supposed to put it on the table. So and your phone shouldn't be in your bra. They shouldn't be in your groin pocket. I tell my boys all the time, I'd like to be a grandmother one day. I mean, the
Yeah.
idea is that it does affect sperm count and quality. We know that it potentially could cause benign and cancerous breast tumors if women who keep them, in their bra. So we want to be thinking, how do we just use our toys, but use them more safely and get a little distance from them?
What do you think about the kids wearing earbuds all the time?
Yeah, I don't like it. I think the studies are going to show that they're really working as an antenna,
Mhm.
similar to, if you had a phone right up against your head. Because these signals that pulse about 90 per second from an antenna, from a tower, have to reach something. So they're now reaching the buds instead of the phone and letting the sound, like my earphones, go up to my ears. My ears are not the antenna or next to the antenna of my phone is, or my, what have you. So the idea is that you really just want that distance. So I don't prefer Bluetooth. I mean, at least earbuds. I mean, in the car, it's different to keep you from getting into a car accident, but anything close to the body, it's all about distance from the body.
Yeah, and I see that more with you just see kids in
Hmm.
that generation, high school, college, everyone's has the headphones on. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I think people, are there great studies on this? No, not yet, because they're $1 million studies. We're going to find out maybe later. We all know not to keep your phone up against your head, but no one
uh-huh.
extrapolates that to Bluetooth.
Yes.
So I
Mhm.
find that interesting that we like our toys. We like
Yeah.
new stuff, but it takes years later to figure out if it was a problem. And
Hmm.
my role in sharing a lot of this information is what's called the precautionary principle, is that if it just doesn't sound like it's good to do, and even though there's not hard and fast evidence of cause and effect, you should really kind of pull back a little, kind of like, think before you jump type of mentality.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if someone has to make, if they're saying, okay, where do I want to start? Like, what's the first thing that I should do? I know kind of you gave us your 4 hours, but what would you say, like,
Yeah.
where's your biggest concern when it comes to
Yeah,
chemicals?
and I will say this, I'm going to hold the book up because I do want people to know there's this 21-day plan. And I
Okay.
think I didn't know that there was going to be as much attention on the 21-day plan, and you never really know what people are going to how they're going to receive the information.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about the 21-day plan is really like, what do you do day one? What do
Hmm.
you do day two? It's nothing fancy, it's nothing exciting. It's just kind of like, let's get started. And so when I talk about the 21-day plan, I start with, and it's divided out in the 4 A's as well. It's kind of like, let's assess and remove a lot of what we see. So it's more like surveying your body, surveying the rooms in your home, and thinking about what we could swap. Do we want to swap out our Tupperware for glass and stainless steel in the kitchen? Maybe swap out a nonstick pan for a stainless steel pan because we know nonstick chemicals get into our food when we cook it. Maybe we want cast iron. Maybe we should be thinking about the spatulas and stirring things that we put in our hot soups and that kind of thing that could be metal instead of plastic. So that would be a great intervention, not costly. But I have people like sort of survey where they walk into their lives and what rooms and what may be a component of problems. And I think that's a really good place to start is kind of cleaning house, so to speak. But I also talk about things like, highest yield changes like water and food, which we have to eat and drink every day. Maybe focus on things like your habits. Like my tea in the morning is filtered water, and then I use, a porcelain cup, and I have, sort of, I think about my loose leaf tea versus the tea bags because I love tea, and I think, okay, I'll just use loose leaf because that's less microplastics from the tea bag. So I think about high yield changes, typically habits that I have every day that I can tweak to make a little cleaner. And I think of water and food as some of the biggest inputs for that in terms of making changes that matter.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think water is something that can be confusing for people because there's a lot of different, we need the minerals, but then we
Right.
do like the reverse osmosis is better, but then you can add mineral. My reverse osmosis has a mineral, it adds the
Yeah.
minerals back in actually. So
And you
there's a
can
lot
have
of
just
different
sea
ways.
salt.
Yeah.
Sea salt adds in minerals, electrolytes.
Hmm.
Food will have minerals if you choose wisely. So, I mean, the idea that
Hmm.
I always get asked that question
Yeah.
about reverse osmosis, which is the one I recommend in terms of filtration. It's most aggressive for water, and it's usually very inexpensive as a under the sink option. But yeah, it removes everything because it removes it by size. It works on a size material that the smallest things get captured. And so it's going to take minerals because it doesn't know the difference between lead and mercury and phthalates and, calcium and magnesium. But the idea is that you can get those from healthy foods, which should, have been, considered anyway, independently of the
Yes.
water. So to me, I wouldn't worry too much. Water is not the source of nutrition. Water never has been. It's really hydration, and food
Yes.
is nutrition.
I like that. Yes. Yes. Well, you've shared such great information. Can you tell us about your book where everyone can find you and learn more?
Thank you. So it's called Detoxify. It's on, Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. I think Wow Books, some of the smaller venues, but essentially it's out there. It's pre-order available now. It's only a couple weeks away, depending on when you air this, but it publishes May 6th. And I really hope people will check it out and share it amongst a whole family or a group of friends. I really want people just to be conscious and have the right vetted tools to do this process without flipping out. It's very practical. It's very reasonable. I reasonable cases for why this matters and how easy it is to do. And yeah, people can find me. I have a platform called The Smart Human, the website, thesmarthuman.com. I have courses if people want to dabble into some courses, whether it's on pesticides or drinking water or heavy metals, a bunch of different topics. So check that out on thesmarthuman.com and follow on social media. And I'm in Princeton if people want to see me as a physician. I do telemedicine and I do in person. So yeah, I'm out there.
And well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone.